of events. Speaking of which, of confluence events, here we are. We're live. Episode 160 of This Life in Tech. I am Jason.
Still the bad guy.
And I'm TK. Dan, that was surprisingly muted.
Yeah, that was calm.
For now. I'm saving the fuckery for a little bit later.
I mean, if anybody wonders why I have a pregnant pause when he starts this, I'm waiting for the second half of whatever's going to happen.
We never know.
I got a little bit of PTSD over the years, and I'm just waiting.
I've had several people now point out to me that it's nice that you're always in between Dan and I.
I told you last week I've got to get a black and white shirt.
Yeah. Oh man. So this is a hard jump. We'll just jump right into it. So
yeah,
I'd say you this.
We've already had one extra day in the year, so we've already worked infinitely harder.
All right. Well, so here's our first derailing then, because maybe we'll try to segue this. I had a student that I was talking to the other day on Friday, which was the 28th, which normally would be the end of the month. And they said, hey, I don't remember how it came up, but they basically said, oh, it's the last day of the month. And I said, well, no, it's not. There's one more day because it's a leap year. And their watch, their digital watch, did not know how to account for a leap year. And so yesterday was March 1st for them. How kind of neat is that there's a little bug?
I was going to say, I want to know the manufacturer that. We need to put it out here so that
Apple
get back to them when they start faking. Dan, Apple. I will tell you what, my Garmin Fenix 6X was Johnny on the 29th.
Yeah. Yeah, my Fenix 5, 0 issues.
Yeah.
About all of my Android and Chrome devices, no issues.
Right.
0.
I would be interested to see what type of device that was.
It was not a smartwatch. It was like a little rinky-dink Casio $5 out of a slot machine.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like it wasn't high end.
Now we're gonna have the Casio people on us. We're gonna have to do this whole big free advertising campaign because he insinuated the Casio products are crap.
Well, yeah, you know what I'm saying, man. It had like that aesthetic.
I have no idea what you're saying.
So much for getting a sponsorship from Casio.
Casio G-Shock was the bomb when I was a young frogman. You want to know a story about Casio to really derail this completely?
Yeah, let's go.
When
the calculator watch?
After that. Way back in the day, seals, because there were so few of them, you had a dive watch, used to get issued Rolexes. Well, that at some point became to be seen excessive. And so then they were given tutors. Then it was Seikos, and it was a successively, march towards a cheaper and cheaper watch. And so they were trying to find these analog dive watches, all of which were crap. And finally, one of us, in the group just said, well, why don't you just give us the Casio G-Shock? And that became the default watch because you couldn't kill it. Like literally, that one battery would last 5 years or so. And by that time, there was a new model, and for the $55-$60 that the Navy was spending per watch at the end of that 5 years, just give us the watch back, and we'll give you a new watch. Over the years, they tried a bunch of different crazy watch during my time frame. I don't know what they're doing today, but there was this constant drumbeat to get a better watch. And I'm sure today they're using. They're using something that full GPS, blah, all that, everything that you would expect out of a modern smartwatch. But back in the day, we finally just said, if you're going to mess around and keep trying, just get us the G-Shock because we couldn't break them. And I literally watched a young frogman break an anvil.
Well, wow. So I was saying it looked like a cheap Casio.
Oh, wait, I got the Casio. I got the Casio people off our butt now.
Yeah, it's just like that 80s, early 90s aesthetic. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But think about. Oh, Dan is frozen. Dan, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Your video's frozen.
I'm fucking around.
Oh,
shocker.
Yeah. Like imagine that. Like you're a student, you're running around. It's kind of important to know what day of the week it is, right? And your watch is lying to you.
You don't have to know the date. You just have to know the day. Like, because on Monday I do these classes, on Tuesday I do these classes, right? So I don't have to know the date. I just need to know the day of the week generally.
That's a fair point.
Generally.
That's probably a life thing, right? How many times do you have to know the absolute date, right? Yeah, most of the time, hey, when are you flying out of town? Next Monday.
Jason, you got like incense going on in the background?
I do.
I see like all the smoke coming up over your head.
It's because I'm so hot, baby.
oh. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, look at that smoke. Look at that.
Either that or your bicycle. Either that or your bicycle's on fire. One of the two.
Yeah.
No, it's not that. It's the incense, man. You got to properly invoke the spirits for the ritual.
Whatever you got to do. I normally just kill a rooster or two.
Ooh.
Was that a nice Bull Durham reference right there?
Yeah, it was.
I got you. For all the younger viewers, the movie in the mid '80s. Don't worry about it.
It was a great baseball movie. Great baseball movie. Dan,
what do you think as a former hardcore baseball player, what do you think the best baseball movie ever was?
Ever? Well, Bull Durham certainly ranks up there.
Major League with Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, it's a funny movie.
I have my reason why I think Bull Durham is one of the best baseball movies ever. Why do you think so?
Well, I think for several reasons. I mean, the aspects of all of the philosophies of a mentor trying to bring up someone that's young, so they'll be prepared to handle the pressures of what the show's really going to bring. Crash Davis is this, hit basically tremendous. What I would consider a 4A ball player, meaning that they're too good for the minors, but not good enough for the pros. And so he goes around team by team by team, and he's about ready to hit the minor league record for home runs in a career, and no one really knows about it. But he's there to bring another young talent who's got $1 million arm and a 15-cent brain. That's part of the movie. Is what he says, and then he starts calling him Meat because he gave himself his own nickname, which was another great part.
You can't. Yeah, it's the rule in life. You can't give yourself your own nickname.
He's like Meat. He's like, why does he keep calling me Meat?
I think one of the reasons that, aside from the fact that they take a great comedic look at the struggles of trying to get to the next level at anything, is that it was baseball accurate, right? Every time there was a reference to baseball, like he says one time, oh, you were in the show. He's like, yeah, I was in the show once for 21 days. Because it's a 21-day disabled list.
Yeah.
Right. So with the 25-man roster, they had to pull somebody off, and he got to be up there for 21 days. You can fake that with a lot of people, but I think, and I don't, obviously I don't know anything about the behind the scenes of the movie, but from what I do know, and just the number of baseball movies that he wanted to be involved in, was Kevin Costner was a baseball geek. And I'm sure that it was really important to him to have that level of accuracy, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Otherwise, one of my other favorites is 8 Men Out.
Yep, I like that too.
But going back to the aspect of Bull Durham, I mean, it's a lot about life. I mean, the funny part is in there. He's like, what are you wearing? He's got these shower shoes. It's got like fungus on it. He goes, you can do that once you've I don't remember exactly the whole aspect of that.
Once you get to the show, you'll be eccentric.
Yeah. Right now?
But now you're a slob.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
I mean, it's what I tell a lot of the young people that work for me. While when you make it to a certain point, no one's really going to care, because you've proven yourself. But until then, you need to, in many ways, look the part, because people don't know if you're good or not. And the people that have to make the business decisions, they don't want to see, all of the tattoos and the earplugs and all these kind of things, because they don't know if you're good or not. Right now, you look like someone that might steal from them, and they don't want to be around you. So, I tell them, dress as best as you possibly can afford.
Do we think that paradigm's changing now?
No. There's always going to be more people that are business degree majors than there will be, computer science.
Well, I don't say just that. I think that the business norm of what we consider to be proper dress for a certain function. Now, I would say that being in the financial world, that's probably a little bit different. But you go to a big tech company, I think the business side of the house, those people are probably going to be more traditionally dressed, for lack of a better term, and the creative side of the house, in this case being developers and things like that, or they'll be given a little bit more latitude as long as they produce. Do you think that's a truism?
No, I would think so. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with, of course, the industry is there, but also even if you work for a tech company and you are one of the, up and coming tech person, if you are customer facing, I don't think so.
I agree with that. But there's customer facing, and then there's at a certain point, like if you show up as a developer and you're overdressed, you've got to basically manage your peer group a little bit, right? And so I think you're overdressed, and I think once you go from being part of the staff developers to being a lead developer, and then you start moving up, then I think you've got to say you're in part, right? Your appearance is making a statement about where you want to go. Right?
Sure. Now, yeah, absolutely. Now, mind you, I could care less what anyone wears.
Well,
I don't care because I care about the results. But
right.
I try to give them the lessons that not everyone's going to be as open-minded as what I am. Other people are going to be like, no, you can't. If you look like that, I just won't hire you. I mean, it's.
See, Grayson, I mean, look at yourself. Look at what you've said earlier about, like, hey, previously I wasn't concerned about tenure. I wasn't concerned about all these other things, and so I just ran to my own drummer at other schools. And now that you're here, while you've played the game a little, you play the game a lot better, so to speak, and use that term in air quotes. You still find a way to exercise some of your own personality in that, by whether it's wearing Chuck Taylors or doing whatever. But bringing that in as part of the norm, and you've gotten other people to do that, right? So I think there's a great middle ground that says, hey, you can do whatever you want, but at some point, and you can say whatever you want, right? I say it to people all the time. You can say whatever you want, but you just have to be willing to pay the consequence for that, right? And that's not all.
Right. And I think part of the lasting issue, particularly, like, let's just take dress code for instance, right? Because it's easy to talk about. But I think this is true for any standard. When you're trying to, you can't have no rules because it'll just fall apart at a sufficiently large size, right?
Right.
And so you have to have some rules. And so then the problem becomes, how do you define what the rule is? And so do I have a rule that says, okay, you can have purple hair but not green hair? That you can wear jeans, but they can only be this color or this style or this make, right? You can only wear jeans that cost more than $100. I mean, so the problem becomes you get down this ever nested set of rules that start modifying rules because that's the complexity you're dealing with, where it's just easier to say everybody has to dress business casual. And society defines business casual. And I think that's why we won't see ever, I don't think it'll ever change, the complete evaporation of these kinds of social norms. Because it's the absence of no rules. You know what I mean?
Well, and here's a weird thing about that, which is funny to me because when you talk about the green hair, purple hair, things of that nature. So when I was working for Tech Systems on the help desk, they had a specific thing in there that men couldn't wear an earring at all, and I had one, but it was perfectly okay if a guy or anyone wanted to wear a nose ring, a ring in your eye, or your lip, or anything along those lines, but it just couldn't be in your ear. To me, that was always funny because I'm going, oh, you're worried about appearance, but then a guy could come in with basically his lip pierced all the way across his bottom lip. That's not good. But the earring, no, that's bad.
That's too far. We've walked a bridge too far. Think about where this started, though. You look at after World War II, and this great industrial evolution of putting people to work and becoming what people say, hey, the greatest generation. and getting America back to work and becoming this industrial powerhouse for the world. IBM was the first one. Everybody had a blue suit, white shirt, and some sort of muted color tie, and it manifested itself over the thing. I was watching a special on, I don't know, Smithsonian or one of the, What's Left of Civilization channels yesterday, and
you were reminiscing of what it was like back then.
Actually, I'm not even going to go there. I was going to say something but they was talking about the day we landed on the moon, and as they go through mission control, everybody has the same uniform on, right? They all have a dark suit. They might have the jacket off, but they all have dark suit, white shirt, light colored shirt, and a tie on, right? And think about what that looks like now, right? And a lot of it is, and I think this goes ebbs and flows. When you enter a time of conflict, social norms relax, right? And then once you're done, everybody puts the noose back around it again, right? So we have to have this thing, and right, I would say that rules without relationships equal rebellion, right? And so we start making those rules. If it's just arbitrary and we just do it because somebody's sitting in the top chair and says, "Today, no earrings," right? You can have a bullwhip coming out of your behind or whatever, but I just don't like earrings. Why? Because he only sees you sitting down at your desk and he sees you from here up. Or she, right? And it's that mentality, right? Where that consciousness of hey, we're gonna, leadership's gonna set the tone, and the tone is performance, right? And I would say that and you guys probably find this all the time with young people. Sometimes you have to leave them and go, look, hey, when we're doing this, nobody cares what you look like. I really don't. Show up in a Speedo with suspenders and flippers on. I really don't care. But if we're going to go out and we're going to present the company to the world or to a group of people, here's what I'd appreciate, right? And this is why, right? Because a lot of times we leave the why out, and then it seems like this Satorian autocratic thing where, man, they just want me to dress like the man, right? And you see it. Major League is another one, right? Where we wear sleeves at this level. Right, and he's got the suit jacket on with the sleeves cut out. He's like, I feel like a banker. Right. Yeah. Well, there was no explanation as to why what you're asking for is important. Right. That, context of decision making, and if you watch the show, you're gonna hear me beat this one up all the time. Context of decision making is the key to effective leadership. And if you're not giving that, then you feel like a banker when you've got a sport coat on with no sleeves.
Yeah, and where I'm at, we no longer, the dress code basically is business casual and no ties. So, it is a whole big thing. Well, for me, as casual as I pretty much can get at work is just, I wear the suit or the sport coat, but I just don't wear a tie. Right. Most people show up now in golf shirts.
Right.
And, this is what's, I don't know if it's necessarily true or not, but I can tell you, in certain areas, the productivity has significantly declined when they've changed the dress code policy.
I don't. My dad was big on that. My dad was like, and he's as old school 50s employee as you could get, right? Worked at General Electric from I think 54 to 88, and it was, hey, when we start relaxing the dress code, people stop working, and I could never to me I'll tell you, we've talked about this before. I was at RSA all week, and previously, if you saw people walking around in suits with ties, they were usually investors. They were money people, right? And then if you saw them walking around with a pair of jeans on, a sport coat, and a shirt, usually they were the tech leadership. And then if you saw people walking around with hoodies and the whatever the shirts were from the conference, they were the developer crews. They were the doers, right? They were the makers. And aside from the fact that the conference was a lot more muted this year, there was a subdued vibe to it compared to previous years.
Everyone walk around in masks?
No. I mean, there was a much bigger
there's a shortage on masks.
Focus on pointing out where hand sanitizing stations were and everything like that, which that's effective. And it didn't. I also think one of the other things that kind of made it so it wasn't so overcrowded on the floor was it was beautiful weather. It was 70 degrees, and there were a lot of companies that had outdoor events around around the event, not necessarily in the building. And so everything was just smooth and relaxed, right? But you just, now you used to go, especially like the big companies, you'd go to their booth, you'd see the one or two guys with, like you said, with the suit on, with the shirt without a tie. That's the head of sales, right? That's the EVP of sales right there. And then now it's becoming harder and harder to pick out who's who.
See, and I'll tell you what my opinion is on this, even from my own anecdotal experience over the past year. At first, I thought a dress code as a rule or an enforcement of a social norm had a correlation with productivity because of, let's say, what it represents externally. Okay. And so I'm part of this group. I'm identifying based on uniform, for lack of a better way to describe it. And so there's this deterrence, right? Because there's a consequence to not being part of the group, right? There's visually, right? The aesthetic of it, there's a consequence if you don't fit in correctly. And what I've come to realize is I don't think that's not true, but I think what's more true is it's about the inner ritual of what preparing yourself mentally by going through this ritual of dressing and putting on the uniform and becoming part of the group allows you to essentially be prepared for productivity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'll tell you, I don't know why I just thought of this. I probably haven't thought of this in 30 years. When I first got to SEAL Team 2, Rudy Bosch, the guy from Survivor, the old-ass guy from Survivor, he just passed away last year. Dan, he was older than me, if you can believe it. He was, one of the legendary frogmen. He was from the day that the command, like that they commissioned SEAL Team 2 and President Kenny shook everybody's hand. He was there. And he ran the command. He had been there he had been the Command Master Chief longer than I had been alive the day I showed up. Right. And to function correctly at SEAL Team 2 as a young guy, he would stand on the quarterdeck when you used to walk walk in the building, and they called that area the quarterdeck, and walk across there. Every Tuesday, he would just be standing there. And if you didn't have a fresh haircut, he wouldn't say anything. You just better check the watch bill because you had duty that weekend. All right. And during the day, even when you went to PT and went to work out, you had to have running shoes on, white socks with no logos on them, the blue shorts or sweatpants from the command, and then the blue sweatshirt or blue T-shirt.
Good luck getting white socks today with no logo on it, though.
I got it, right? But again, we're talking about a long time ago.
I know.
Right? And so I just, after I've been there for a while and felt comfortable asking him a question, because for a while as a new guy, he was one of the guys, he did the beach survey on Incheon so that MacArthur could say, yes, we can hit Incheon. I mean, that's the level of where this guy was at, right? And I finally got up enough courage to ask him this question. Master Chief, why is having the right socks, this one pair of socks, and why is that so important to you? I understand haircuts from a Navy standard and blah, 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 stuff, but why is having that one pair of socks on so important to you? He goes, if you can't get the correct socks on 5 days a week, why am I going to give you a gun and let you roam the earth?
Yeah.
Right? He goes, it starts with that. You got to be able to do the easy things right. Right? And so a lot of times, and I think the military is probably the most stark example of this, you ask people to do things that are considered to be inane or in some ways even counterproductive, right? Because, especially today, people have their feelings, right? And I want to dress like this, I want to dress like that. But if you say, I'm trying to assess a baseline, and that baseline is, if you can't get dressed the way I ask you, why should I let you do more important tasks?
Yeah. Well, wouldn't you agree most, not all, but most hard things really are just a lot of little things? And if you can just build momentum and keep going on the small little things, you can accrete enough progress that you'll conquer the big thing.
Right. It's not hard. It's complicated sometimes. And and I'll give you the absolute best example of people trying to eat the elephant all in one bite is Hell Week during SEAL training. People will go, oh, I'm starting on this day. I'm starting on a Sunday night, and I've got to survive till Friday. And they try to look at it in totality. The people that are successful break it down into smaller pieces. Right? Some people go, okay, I went personally, how I said is I'm going to make it to every meal. Right? You ate 4 times a day. So I'm going to make it to every meal. Once I get to every meal, I get an hour to myself effectively. As long as I don't fall asleep inside when it's warm and I'm awake, nobody bothers me. And I get to recharge myself mentally for that hour. And then I'm going to get back at it. I'll make it to the next meal. And then after a while, you start to go, I don't care what they do to me, I'm going to make it. But you have to get to a point of survival, right? And I think most people that don't do well at some humongous task in life, they go, I've got to get to the end result. And I'm only seeing the end result. And they don't focus. Right. Because here's the thing, if you're focusing on the macro, sometimes you can miss that little baby step forward that gives you the motivation to take one more big step. And I think in life, it's development, right? We go work on a development project. Sometimes you'll take 5 steps forward, and then you come into work the next day, something borks, and you're 6 steps back. Well, I don't want to get all 7 steps now. I just want to get one more step forward, so I know I'm moving back in the right direction. And the minute that exactly going, I've got to have the whole thing under control right now, is when most people fail.
Yeah, I would agree, 100%. Well, like I gave one of my classes an enormous amount of work to finish for midterms this week, and I didn't give them a lot of time to do it, and they're fairly complex, right? They're complicated, but if you rig it out correctly, you just follow the direction. All you got to do is follow the direction instead of convincing yourself that it's harder than what you can accomplish. Like there's a part, I shit you not, there's one big part of what I asked them to do is in the book. Like there's a picture of it. It's right there. Well, and I even point out in the directions on page whatever, there is a picture of what I'm asking you to do. Follow the picture.
I tell you, one of the best things when I was in college, it was read a certain book, right? Mm-hmm. Got to the exam, one question: how did the book end? Yeah. I thought it was a relatively straightforward. What's that?
The end.
No, obviously a little bit more in depth than that, doctor. So I wrote down how the book ended, and then I gave an opinion as to why the author did that. Wasn't required, but I did that. I got an A. Half the class got A's, half the class got F's. There was no middle ground. You know why? There was a movie out of the book, and the movie ended different than the book. And so the people that just watched the movie got a different view of how the movie ended, right? Mm-hmm. It just didn't follow simple instruction. The book was only like 150, 170 pages long, but it wasn't like something that was going to suck up War and Peace in my life, right? And so you have to follow simple instruction.
Yeah, and I think, now we're really getting away from what we were going to talk about, but I like this because this is what I've figured out. I've also figured out that not only in my own work, but when I'm trying to guide other people, if I can rig it up so that there's a series of small milestones up front that are, let's say, easy or really small and ought to be accomplishable, you can ride that momentum wave into what really is more challenging, and then you're better prepared for it. And so to me, this is like this idea of ritual of how do I prepare myself and maintain mindfulness in what I'm doing so that when I get to the stuff that truly is, let's say, uncertain or unknown, that I'm ready to confront it appropriately. And I've not unduly unprepared myself. You know what I mean?
Well, it gives you confidence, right? So even as these skills, they build up, even if you come across a task you've never done before, you just know that you just completed the last 50.
That's right.
So this is just one more that you can do. Subconsciously, that's how you're going to approach it.
It's the make your bed theory, right? Yeah. Get out of bed, make your bed. And I even, like, when I get out of bed at a hotel, I pull the bed up. It's just an unconscious thing. I don't even think about it. I've done it since I was a little kid. And because it was what was required.
Long time.
That's a lot of bed making, Dan. But it was what was required in my house as a kid. Like, you got out of bed, and hey, when you were smaller, it didn't have to be perfect. But as you got older, there was more diligence, right? To the point where it becomes an unconscious act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think we've talked about this a little bit, but the powerful thing of those types of metaphors are wearing the socks correctly, right? Is that it's also an easy way to, let's say, start the day, right? If you're talking about getting dressed in that ritual or making your bed in that ritual. it's a really easy way to start something by creating order, right? And putting things in their place is important. And so you don't have to deal with that. It's one less piece of chaos you have to deal with, is the way I look at it.
But the funny thing is, you take a group, when you take a group dynamic where in certain times in the SEAL community, order is required because it's a safety thing, right? We jump out of airplanes a certain way, we dive a certain way. Everybody understands those paradigms, they understand those rules, and those rules are put there to keep people alive. It's risk management, right? And that's, I think, Dan, from working at Silence or whatever else, one thing I'm really good at is risk management, whether it's tech risk management, business systems risk management, because I spent my whole career managing risk as a jump master, dive supervisor, or in leadership positions. And so there has to be a structure to maintain order because of safety, right? Now, if everything you do is, from a work perspective, is regimented, even shooting guns, how do you get, I think to some outsiders, to watch us shoot guns looks like chaos, right? Because we're not the 101st Infantry Division, stand on line, everybody 10 meters apart, and hope for the best as they're pointing in one direction, right? There's a lot of moving pieces to this because we put a lot of pressure on people to do the right thing all the time, even though, and react to situations, not create a form, right? So now you go to a point where you're not working, right? You're not actively engaged in work, but you have to be at work, and you have to be part of that system of the military. Well, how does it manifest itself, right? We would turn to comedy, and dark comedy, right? There was a guy that every morning he would miss quarters, right? It's to the point where everybody gets out there and you all stand in formation, right? And everybody, the CO comes out for a while and talks, or the XO, and it's how we get the day started. And it's an informative session. And what its intent is to put everybody in the organization on the same page for the duration of the day. And then there's announcements. There's always some goofy stuff that goes on. One of the funniest things I've ever seen is when a new guy shows up, they get him up, they stand in front, and he has no idea what's about to happen. And then they'll like, tell us something about yourself. And the minute he opens up, everybody in the formation starts basically berating him verbally. And I never used to watch the poor kid that was up there. I used to watch the crowd, because it was this rabid group of individuals for 20 seconds. And then everybody would be like, okay, we got it, and then stop. And it was right back to order. But there was one guy every day that would miss quarters. Now, this is back before there were any women with the SEAL team. And so it was just chaos with the dudes in the morning. And you had a lot of older Vietnam vets that were standing behind us. It was the last great generation of those veterans that were there to kind of finish their careers where they started. And there was a lot of respect paid to them. Quarters would start, and they'd stand back there, keep talking, because you're not going to tell me what to do, right? And I was like, perfect. And we would learn stuff. We would learn stuff from them. A guy wrote a history book, and he would get up and say, hey, today in SEAL history. And it was I didn't realize at the time how informative it really was. This one guy would miss quarters every day of the week. Finally, the XO said to in the hallway one day, he goes, hey, look, you miss quarters tomorrow or any day after that, and you're going to be restricted for the weekend. Next day shows up. He comes out. He's got his white socks on. He's got his running shoes. And Rudy's already retired. He's got his white socks on, got his running shoes on. He's got his blue T-shirt on, but he's got no pants. And he just walks out there, and he stands in formation at the front corner, right? So the first person the XO is going to see when he walks out is this cat with no shorts on. He looks at him, and I'm not going to say his name because it's a very unique name, and anybody will argue. He was like, God damn it, and said his name. He goes, and the cat looks around. He goes, what, I'm here? And then he goes, look at yourself. He looks down, and he goes, oh, man, I forgot to put shorts on, and walks off and still missed quarters. Right? That was his rebellion, right, to the system. Yeah. Right? Because if you went around to other commands, SEAL Team 2, they used to call it Stalag 2, because we were considered to be the most disciplined, and it was the holdover from having Rudy there. Right? And it was haircuts, and it was the whole 9 yards, right? And a lot of the other commands were more relaxed. But that's how people would express individual rebellion. You would do, oh, I've got to be there. Well, I'm not going to be there the whole time, and I'm going to do something that's going to allow me to walk off. Right? But right. When it came down to inside,
I can appreciate that.
Oh no, I can too. We're going to jump, dive, shoot. he was all ears, organized, part of the active. He was an active participant in success, right?
Yeah.
And that's safety, being there, or all those things, because that was the important stuff, right? And when you overvalue, everything can't be serious, right? And everything can't be equally a big deal. How do I manage that?
Right.
I don't know how we're going to separate
one step at a time
today, but we're just going to have to start talking about it.
Well, I was actually just thinking that actually is a good segue, because part of ritual is routine, and this repetition of we do it this way and it's always this way, and that creates a good pattern. But here's your segue. When you're trying to deter a behavior, a repeatable or predictable pattern actually isn't desirable. So here's the example. And this is what we were talking about, and maybe we'll get to it. We'll see what happens. So I drive to work every day, and I'm a really A to B type person. I drive the exact same way every single time. I drive the exact same speed limit in the same lane of the freeway, so forth and so on, because I really just can't be asked out to think of another way to get there. And I don't like it. I just don't want to think about it. I just go. Okay. And the way I go every morning, if I am there at a certain time, because there's a high school, there's a cop car that's sitting in the driveway of the high school. I've never seen a cop in it, near it, around it. I have no idea how it magically gets there and magically goes away. It's just there. And the idea, because this happened a lot in California too, is the car is put there to signify that there is a police presence in the area as a deterrent for, in this case, people speeding up and down this road. And so what happens is the first couple times you see it, you slow down if you're speeding and you pay attention. And then over time that kind of gets relaxed because, well, now the pattern is, yeah, the car's there, but there's never a cop in it, right? And so the power of that deterrence control goes away. And I read this article and shared it, at least with you, TK, that
and then when people do slow down, this person's not a local.
Well, right, exactly. Yeah. There's a neat little sub pattern that emerges, right? This isn't somebody that's usually going this way at this time. And so that's part of what happened too, is these researchers were working on poachers, I think in Africa. I think they were poaching elephants. And they have these drones up to help the park rangers identify where there could or are poachers. And so the poachers at first got deterred, and then they got desensitized because the drones would always beep a certain way. And so these dudes figured out how to introduce an algorithm that randomized or created uncertainty in whether or not a signaling pattern of the drone was actually calling for the park rangers to show up. And apparently it's produced a marked reduction in poaching in that area. So I kind of found that cool. Like, as much as like we have this idea that repetition creates normalcy, and normalcy is this preparation for productivity. At the same time, you do have to have these little crazy moments where some dude shows up without any pants on to create uncertainty in the environment. You know what I mean? It's weird the way that works.
I think if you look at it, poaching and doing, poaching, human trafficking and things like that, those are much further along in the scale. But I think most of the deterrent type things are to deal with traffic, right? And smaller cars. If the speed limit's 45 and I'm going 50 and I got both hands on the wheel and I'm not a complete zipperhead, then I'm probably not a danger to anybody else, right? But speed limit's a speed limit, right? When I was living in England, there was a certain road, and everybody knew it, that had a very big, it was like the early use of those cameras, right? The traffic camera. Well, back in the early 90s, there was no Wi-Fi back to digital to translate, give you a picture and send you a ticket. They actually took pictures, and it was film that was loaded into this thing. You'd drive by it, you'd see people all the time, and you could tell who were the tourists because all of a sudden the light would flash. That went on. I was there for 2 years, and for about a year, everybody knew it. And so one time I went through the first time, the flashlight went off. Like, oh man, never got a ticket, right? But I learned my lesson, and I was like, oh man, I'm coming around this corner. I just got to slow down for this 200 feet. I was out one night, and one of the guys that I worked with, his wife was a police officer, And I was saying something about that. And I said, I never got the ticket. She's like, oh, we haven't had film in that thing for years, but the light keeps going off and it keeps people slowed down. Right. And people just feel, okay, I got one on. And because after that, you're desensitized, or you're kind of molded, shifted to change, to say, hey, I'm not going to do it again. How many times do you continue to speed through that? You don't. So you never get to build up a book of thought that, hey, no matter what I do, I'm not getting a ticket. You just figure you were lucky that one time, and you're not going to push the issue again.
Right. Well, that's why, I read that and I was thinking about like the traffic cameras, because in California, they're super popular. I don't think I've ever seen one here in North Carolina, but I really don't go into big cities here. So take it for what it's worth. But I started to think, like, is this a case where maybe some false negatives, like deliberately introduced into the system, would create uncertainty? So what I mean by that is, so what if the camera were programmed in a way where randomly it would select a vehicle that is not in violation, but still took the picture and issued a warning, not a citation. So you actually got something in the mail, right? And so
what are you giving a warning for? That you were what are you giving a warning for? That they were almost in trouble?
Fuck it, for nothing. Just, we took a picture of you. Here's your picture, so that people know that the cameras.
Then you start getting the tinfoil creepy police state hat. People out there, right? And
it's actually gotten a lot better looking since then, TK. It's not as creepy looking anymore.
What's that?
The creepy hat. It's no longer as creepy looking. We've made it to where it's a little bit more politically correct, and takes in all of the people's feelings.
I'll say the adverse effect around here. They started at some big intersections with the police, with the speed cameras. And there's one in particular where everybody knows if you're halfway through in yellow, you're going to get caught. So what do people do? They, instead of basically stopping and just dealing with that one cycle light, they nail it. And now you have people, not only is the potential for accident increased, it's increased, and it's increased again because now it's more increased in speed. So when you do have it, if you do have an accident, it's going to be even worse. Yeah. Right. And now that to me is a social thing, right? When you merge onto, from two lanes into one, it should be one car from one lane, one car from the other. How many times is it starting, and then there's that one guy he's got to be in front of you, right? And he messes it up for everybody. That's why we can't have nice things, right? And that, there's all of those things. How do you social norm those out, right? If that's really what you're going to do. Right, because now you get people's feelings amped up, and they start doing stupid stuff because now they're like, "Wait a second, that person wronged me." Nah, that person's just he's a jackass, right? And if you just have, there's got to be a K factor for jackassery somewhere. And you just have to go, okay, that's a wild card in the formula. It basically reduces my thing. It's not going to make me crazily angry.
Right. Deterrence work, just for a short time, no matter what. And I even see this when I do, for all of our emails. We've got an external banner, it's colored, and so everyone knows this came from outside the organization. But if you don't change that color up about every 3 months, then all the email just looks the same again.
Right.
Yeah.
And
right.
While it's not it's still a deterrent. But all it is a temporary solution. Really, it's
not a very effective control. Yeah.
Right. It's really not. I would even say it's still user-based enforcement. I could have that there all day long, and the person could still click on a malicious link and be gone.
Sure.
Now,
but again, it's what do I value, right? In society, whether it's traffic or what you're talking about, I value convenience over security. Right.
Everyone does.
That mindset, right? And it's back in the day with Firefox, like one of the first ways to really start to see what the internet was doing to you was to use NoScript in Firefox. Right? Mm-hmm. NoScript is pretty intrusive, right? It would allow you'd open a website, always nothing. You'd hit the drop-down box and you'd see all these different scripts. Right. Well, at the beginning, how do I know which one is the one that's opening Pandora's box, and how do I know which one is plainly just letting me see the basic functions of that website. The great thing about it was when you got people that were interested in their own privacy and security, it became a game to them, right? How little can I allow to get what I need, right? And when we used to teach the guys this, they were all in. They loved it, right? And one day, one of the guys comes into me and he's like, I got to tell you a great story. And these guys would all go home at night and start changing their environment and their home computers to what we were advocating, which I thought was great. Well, Mrs. Frogman and the kids all the time didn't want that, or they hadn't been told why, right? And so I cautioned people. I started cautioning. I go, look, this is great for your personal computer like that. When you go home, understand that your family might not be as excited about the security thing as you are, right? And one of the guys comes in the next day. He's like, I got to tell you this. He's doing that all at home, and his wife's like, what are you doing? So he explains it to her, and she says, hold on. You mean that if I don't do this and I don't do anything, the internet figures out what I like and I'll see it more often? And he's like, well, yeah. She goes, why would I ever change that? Right? And that's total. I'm managed my convenience, right? The best part about it was I would get phone calls from some of these girls if I knew if I family friends were like, their husbands would go home and do something and go one step too far, and then I would get my husband's an idiot. Like, why do you teach him to do this stuff, right? And it was all part of their learning curve, right? How far can I go? And they wanted to go to the next step for security, right? And in life, like, hey, do I want to just let life happen to me? Or do I want to know why it's happening to me, right? And most people just, hey, if it's a pleasant experience, I don't care how I got it. I just want to have that pleasant experience. Like, man, it's really warm when I put my feet in my shoes. Well, yeah, because they're full of poo, right? And you got to think about the consequence a little bit later, right? And so, why am I feeling
the
good?
Tomfoolery in the SEAL community.
Well, I'm not even talking about that. But just as a life's metaphor, right? You don't even want to. I couldn't even begin to start on a public forum about the buffoonery that went on, right? But it was actually the buffoonery against norms was out of control, right? You have a cage area, for example, where everybody gets like a 10 by 10 cage, and we traditionally don't lock our stuff. Right? Because if you got to worry about somebody stealing your stuff, then we got a bigger problem. Right? So when I was at Facility View, Rudy banned locks. He's like, if something goes missing, we're going to get to the bottom of it. Right? And then it manifests itself as you got bigger. Right? We had one of the guys, and he had the cage behind mine. He was Pigpen. His cage was a disaster, and every day somebody would be on him to get his cage cleaned up. Right? And it was him and two of the other guys were just really good friends. They palled around. They did everything together. They should have held hands everywhere they went because they were always together, and they were always messing with each other, right? And so one day I see him in there and he's cleaning up his cage. I'm like, Chris, what's going on? He goes, man, this has got too far. I just got to clean up my cage. And I'm thinking, okay, somebody mandated you do that because of your own. You'll like root through your stuff until you find what you need, right? And I mean, as you would imagine, my cage was, because both of you know me pretty well, my cage is fairly well organized.
I would say it's gonna be like a disaster.
Yeah, exactly. And so, as part of this buffoonery that went on daily, I basically did not participate, right? And one time I caught somebody trying to start with me on the buffoonery, and I looked at them. I go, "Do I ever get involved in this?" And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "Okay, what's my response when we'd start the verbal buffoonery?" He goes, "You go right to nuclear." He goes, "You don't escalate." And I go, so what do you think is going to happen if I find somebody messing around with my cage? He's like, the building's going to fall down. I'm like, exactly. And so I became off limits only because I didn't participate, right? But I was also the guy that sat on the wall and watched it all happen, right? And I would laugh my ass off because it was like you'd watch this intricate setup and you knew what was going to happen. And then I was trying to contemplate the retaliatory strike, right? So my buddy Chris gets on there and his cage is immaculate. It's cleaned up. He vacuumed. There was no more food stuff. Everything you wouldn't want your 12-year-old to have in their bedroom was gone, like food stuff and everything could bring bugs. And it was perfect. So he leaves and go home. Well, two of the other guys were like, I've got time to mess around with Chris. They take cardboard and this paracord, and he had an end cage, so it didn't have a sliding door. It had, because it was up against the wall, it had to have a door that you opened, right? A hinge door. They took and put under every pile of clothes and everything on there, they put a piece of cardboard, and they attached a string to it and ran it back to the door. Then they turned the light off in his cage so he couldn't see. So the next day when he opened up, it was kind of hard. So he just yanked it, and everything in his cage fell right back into the middle of the floor where it was the previous day. Those two mistakenly started laughing immediately, so they identified themselves as the hooligans, right?
Right.
That same day, I'm not paying attention, but I walked past both their cages, and they were chain link cages. So every inch or so you had chain link. He took industrial zip ties, not the little ones, but the big ones that are like 2.5 feet long that'll basically be used as handcuffs. He took those, and at every link went around and zip tied their cage door shut. So it was going to take them 20, 30 minutes to get in. Everything we do is on time. And so they're going to roll in 10 minutes before they got to be there. And now they got to get in their cage, get dressed, and go. Well, now they're out of luck, right? So they're stuck, and they show up in civilian clothes. They can't work out. They can't do anything. And it was literally like rack and fry, like Yosemite Sam in that cage area all day long. But that went on nonstop, right? Why? Because number one, everybody laughed at it, but it was, hey, how do we relieve stress, and what's the dark humor today, right? Right. In an organization, little things happen like that, right? It's the office space, the red stapler, right? It's moving people's stuff. With Cooper, when we were at Blackbird, it was his birthday. We did, what is it, Little Pony? My Little Pony or something like that. Everything in his office. And his desk had quite a bit of stuff on it. We took everything up, put down a tablecloth, and everything had glitter on it. Like, he opened up everything. And for like a month, he just left it like that. And then we found out the CEO of the company was in there, and the laugh was on him at the end, because we were all like, man, she can't see this. So all of us got in there to help clean up his office because we created the mess.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the part that the guys back when you were in the Navy didn't get. I wouldn't have to do a whole lot to you. I just have to take a couple of things and just slightly move it.
Yeah,
which is what I used to do to TK all the time. Where it's like a circle. I don't have to do a lot.
Here's the thing:
that's more painful than like messing everything up. Just move it at like 10 degrees.
But you know what what the management is for that? Because that's been going on my whole life. Like, just people would just move one thing and no watch for it. And I just walk in and put it backward out. But I might not do it right when I know everybody's watching. I just go about my business. And then when everybody moves away, because you can't, once people know it bothers you, that's when it's a thing.
Yeah.
The buffoonery will go away if, like, oh man, I didn't get a rise out of it. Right?
That's right.
One of my best friends in the SEAL community. He's one of my oldest friends. We did platoons together. We deployed together and like that. We were on a ship deployed, and we're in a closed space, and somebody picked up some of his stuff, and he lost his mind. He's like, this is my notebook. This is this. And he's like, just loses his gasket. Well, we had those embossing guns back in the day. So we were like, Chris's notebook. It got down to, like, he opened his soap dish, and it was Chris's soap. And we took embossing gun and embossed everything he owned. It was Chris's stuff. And whatever it was, by name, Chris's soap dish. He's like, very funny. Opens it up, Chris's soap, Chris's shampoo. And he lost his mind again. So what happened? Every time he went somewhere, there was more and more of his stuff that were labeled.
Yep. So, even at Silent Circle, everyone had redecorated my office into like a disco theme. I'm like, it's great. I'm keeping it right like that.
I actually like that.
I didn't change it. When the people did stuff to my office at the last place, I'm like, I didn't do it. I'm not undoing it.
Right. I thought the disco ball was a great idea, especially because it was functioning with the lights and everything.
Yeah.
Don't fake the disco ball. If you're gonna go disco ball, you got to go all in.
Yeah.
Did you have something to do with that, TK?
No. Nope.
No, it was Branson and Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew who it was. I didn't care. I'm like, go right ahead.
I didn't participate in that kind of crap when I was a junior guy. I'm definitely, as the number 2 guy, not going to walk in and go, hey, let chaos ensue. The Boston Doors did.
Yeah. I'm like, That's the thing. I just like, all right, this is fine. I like it. Now, if I didn't like it, it might be different. But I'm like, all right, that's cool. Not a problem.
No. Even if I don't like it, man, I'll just wait until I go to the bathroom and then I'll curse under my breath. I'm not going to let you get the satisfaction to see me get pissed off. Fuck you.
But that was the great part. Is like even though TK may not have done it, I knew it bothered him just to move that thing a couple of degrees. It didn't matter. I'm like,
yeah,
just enough.
No, what you would do it would always be this. It wouldn't be the stuff on my desk. It would be the stuff on the table behind my desk.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, right. Oh man. So what do you guys got planned for the rest of the day? Anything neat? Anything fun?
I'm going to be going to an AAU basketball practice for a few hours this afternoon and watch my little one run around.
Got some reading to do.
And when I say little one, she's taller than you now, Dan.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. You know,
You got some reading to do, Dan?
Yep, NBA reading. I've got, 2 more months.
You're in the home stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is it.
How many more on-campus visits do you have? 2?
2. And then the third one's graduation.
That's awesome.
You're going to go to that graduation, aren't you?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you,
I
right?
would too.
Yeah, I'm definitely going.
Did you ever get doctoral robes? You got doctoral robes, right?
Mhm.
Are you going to wear them?
Can't. It's not. I could, but it's not appropriate. I'm not being conferred by
Michigan?
the previous one. So you wear the place you're getting your confer. If I was faculty, then I would wear my doctoral robes.
You could get away with it holding a doctorate. You just wouldn't wear that hood. You'd let them give you that hood.
Oh, really?
Technically, you could get away with it. Yeah. I understand why you wouldn't, though.
I think there's a time for sameness, and you've been part of that cohort for 2 years, and being part of that cohort up until the day that they hand you the piece of paper and put the propeller hat on your head, then is a good idea.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
It's been an amazing experience. I mean, I can pretty much take a look at any of the financial statements, anything that's going on, from marketing to what why are we going to do this project, and what's considered risk-free. People are like, oh, this is like basically no risk, and I'm like, so you mean it's government bonds, because that's essentially risk-free. Putting something in a 10-year bond at 1.75%, whatever it is, that's your risk-free. And just getting into those kind of discussions, and then watching the CFO's head spin or something like that, because I tell him about something at Michigan, and he's like, I'm not familiar with that model.
Well, you know what I like about it, man, and why I think in particular I'm proud of you is I think you and I had this conversation somewhat privately, but we both had the same feeling coming from Capital that would like, am I legit? You know what I mean? And so it's nice to see this validation, and not only that, but I think what it's really turned into for you, which I like, is that you actually did better at a better place. You know what I mean? It's not like you went to the better tier and maintained, or maybe performed a little lower. You actually got fucking better when you went to the big game. That's what I like.
Yeah, I mean, it's I will always have imposter syndrome no matter what, because that's just a part of what keeps me motivated, and I'm sure I'll find some reason as to why graduating from the number 4 business school in the country, I'll have something as why it wasn't enough. But I mean, I went to a completely different discipline at again the number 4 business school, and more than held my own.
Right.
You're going to have imposter syndrome until you put CompTIA on your LinkedIn profile. That's all I got to say. Or certified ethical hacker. It's your choice.
Yeah, I'll put them on there. I've got all of them. So
A+.
Yeah. My A+ is probably expired at this point, but
does it ever really expire?
But those are just the things. I mean, that's how I look at it. My dad said to me, he's like, "Oh, I think it's probably time for you to take a break," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'll take a break when I'm dead."
Right.
It's if there's no goal, there's not of what's next. I mean, I think Jason, you'd said it, not too long ago. There's always someone else to conquer, or something else to conquer.
You tell me you're going to law school in a year or 2.
Yeah, that's basically, it'll happen. I don't know when, but I will. Mainly because I got to get the tombstone really wide. That Esquire is one of those titles I can get. But and that came, a lot of that came from the movie Gladiator. And he's like, "Oh, there's no one left to defeat, or and he goes like, there's always someone else. There's always another country. There's always something else.
There's always where next to conquer.
Yep, and I'll figure that out. But from the work that I've done, I mean, my CEO recognizes it and is already putting a lot more things that are not technology directly related on my plate, which is just great. It's that transition away from just being a technology executive.
But that's what good mentors do, right? I mean, it's the way this should work, right? I mean, even at Silent Circle, like Bill invested an incredible amount of energy in me for a protracted period of time. As far as he was like, the tech piece, you understand the people piece of the business. Now let's get you savvy on the financial piece of the business, right? And invested. Why? Because he was doing the right thing as a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, that period, just full stop, right? And large or small, we did. I ran into a bunch of the Silent Circle kids thing, and they're all at varying levels. They're all growing up. Adam is the head of product at Grimm. Joe is he's the executive director of marketing at another company. And you watch, they're all their thing. But I talked to one of them for for more than a little bit, and a lot of it was, what I could tell just by the questions I was being asked was that they weren't feeling they were being. Well, in one of the cases, he wasn't feeling that he was being mentored, right? Because those are the questions that, like, in more adult questions, more complete questions, because he's got a larger perspective on the company now. But still, how do I handle this? I feel like I'm stuck. I think, why? Because he's not getting mentored by anybody at work, right? And so we talked for a while, and I said, hey, if you got any problems, please feel free to call me, right? And I talked about some things that we did at Silent Circle that really we were trying to help him grow, because as an organization, we said, hey, this is the guy that's going to be, he'll be a CEO someday, right? But for now, he's 26 years old, and we want to widen his aperture a little bit. And I think that kind of stuff is usually important. And I would say that for both of you, having come from capital, and kind of feeling like, hey, is this legit? What's the mentor program there? What's the endowment the school has? What's their commitment to growth, right? And if it's not that, it's gonna take place. This is a phenomenon, not for all, but for some of the HBC schools, right, where they are trying to move to the 21st century, and they'll look to schools of a similar size. That, like, what do you think the endowment for High Point is? It's probably massive, right?
Yeah. I know it's not
Harvard, but it's all for the size of the school, where it's at, and everything like that. It's probably a very large endowment. The per capita graduate in giving is probably pretty large, right? You might want go ahead.
I'll put it to you this way: High Point is cash positive enough that all the construction that goes on, they take no debt for it.
That's
they
what I
pay
mean.
For it.
And largely, that's donor. That's your endowment, right? And how you use that. And that's graduates feeling strongly enough about the experience that they had there to say, I want to do better, right? I met an amazing young woman years ago. She had a PhD in applied math from Hopkins. She had a master's in applied math from Georgetown. And then she went to an HBC for undergrad, right? When she was in grad school, and she worked for one of the Intel community agencies. And I was talking to her about her educational experience, because the HBCs fascinate me, right? Because of where their genesis is and where they're at now, and what and how they're trying to do in the 21st century to really expand, grow, and have a positive outcome on some folks that they're the first people in their family ever to contemplate attending college, right? And she said, I would give every bit of resources I have to Georgetown or Hopkins, but I'll never give a dime to this HBC. Like I said, they're not all created equal, but this is not. This is probably more the norm than not. If you look at Morehouse, right? Morehouse men, right? There is, just last year, one of the wealthy folks who graduated from Morehouse, he paid off all the student loans for that graduating class that year, right? Mm-hmm. Because why? He had such a positive, life-changing experience there. He wanted to make sure that he paid it forward and passed it on to the next generation. in a lot of schools, and I said I'm talking about this as an HBC, only because it's the only experience I've talked about. But I'm sure that in schools like where people feel like, hey, is this legit what I'm doing? They're less likely to go and endow the school. Right? I think Emory and Atlanta are probably about the same size as High Point. There's construction day and night in that place, and it's a beautiful, amazing campus. They're doing great things. They don't go in debt because they have an unbelievable endowment. That endowment, I think, is a reflection of people's experience and credibility. When you say, hey, or Jason, when you said to Dan, and I totally agree with this, you went and you upped your game when you went to Michigan. I think it's twofold. One, you're in a much different place in your life than when you went to Capital, right, Dan? You've made it, right? You're CIO of a company, somewhat on the back of your experience and somewhat on the back of the fact that you're Dr. Dan, right? And so you've translated that experience at Capital into a positive outcome, no matter how it was the day you walked away. And same with you, Jason. Now, I believe this. You take somebody that goes to their safety school, for lack of a better word, whatever it is, and they get there, and it's not everything they had imagined. Why? Because they had imagined Harvard, for example, and they didn't get in. Right? What's the statement about Harvard? Harvard is extremely hard to get into, but it's easy to stay at. Why? Because they invest themselves in your success. Right? Totally. Michigan invested themselves in your success, Dan. Jason, you are investing yourself in High Point success through the student and the interaction you have. And you know how I know this? Because you play the game. You're much more engaged. You're there on the weekend wanting to be an advocate for the program when students are coming, prospective future students are coming to interview and to check the campus out. You've never done that before, right? It wasn't important to you. Why? Because you weren't wholly, you're in your consciousness, you weren't wholly invested in that. It was just a job to you. Now you found a home.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right? Right? I'm not joking around about this. I very rarely see you without some Michigan branded gear on. Right? And I'm not saying this a bad way. I've never seen you at Capital, GW, or any other place you've ever went. Right? Why? Because there's an intrinsic way that being in the parlance, being a Michigan man has made you feel. It's the value, right? It's they've created value, right? And that's when we talk about sales, right? Because ultimately every school is selling. They're selling their credibility, right? But instead of saying, the 4 Ps of price, product, or all that stuff, price isn't one of them, right? You paid for Capital. And at the end of it, you walked away saying, hey, did I get what I paid for? Right? Because part of that is the transference of emotion. Dan, 6 months in, you felt that you were getting value. And value makes you ignore other things and defend what you're doing and why. Because you take pride in it, you think you're gaining competency, or you value the cohort that you were with, or in some measure of all three.
It's very true, because I will tell you that the thing that sold me on going to Michigan, and I got into all the schools I applied to, MIT, Sloan. I just didn't get into Kellogg. But what sold me on Michigan was I asked the lady, hey, how do I stack up against other candidates? And she told me, she goes, I think, very high in my book, but here's the most important reason. I think you'll be able to contribute just as much to our program as what our program is going to be able to give to you. And that was what sold me on, this is where I'm going to go.
I think that's hugely important, right? I think that especially, and I think it's why a lot of SEALs end up going to top business schools. When they get out of the Navy, they end up going to top business schools. And I have a friend of mine who he was a bigwig at Goldman, and now he is a bigger wig at another company now. And he said to me, it's somewhat self-effacing, but he's like, look, I was an average student when I was at the academy, right? Then I became a SEAL. I'm not getting into, he went to Columbia. He goes, I'm not getting into Columbia because of my undergrad grades. I'm getting in because I had decent enough grades, but because I'm also viewed as somebody who's going to be an attractive contributor to the cohort. with some views that are different than everybody else's, and that I have, as a SEAL, a legacy of giving back, right? And it not being all about me. And so I think that having heard that now from almost every business school, whether it's guys going to Wharton or Harvard or whatever, they're looking to say, what type of ambassador are you going to be for our program after the fact, right? I mean, look at Bill, for example. I mean, he puts a tremendous amount of positive effort into Wharton, right? So being on the board, helping him get their Sirius channel started, all these things, and positively representing him. And when one of the folks that was there said, "Hey, my son wants to go to Wharton. Can you help him, give him a recommendation?" Bill's like, "By all means." Well, when it was found out that some of the stuff on his resume, for lack of a better word, or entrance documents was not accurate, right? Bill was afforded a courtesy, and that courtesy was a call from the provost of the school saying, "Hey, I just want to let you know, right? You put your trust in somebody, and this is what they did with it," right? And that, I think that that was a dig that hurt more than anything else. It wasn't letting that. It was sort of like, wait a second, I've invested a tremendous amount of energy in a positive outcome from a place that I felt gave me a leg up to enjoy the success I enjoy today. And this is how somebody treats that, right? And that's when you truly know that you've bought in, that you're part of, you're inculcated, and it's in the fabric of you, right? And I think that's probably the gift that you've gotten more than anything from that, Dan.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
This is the kind of stuff I could talk about all day, because it's the psychology of success, right? And
totally.
And what leads to that, right? And on one end of the spectrum, you have, Dan, what you've done is probably very traditional in thought, right? I'm going to go get the highest level of education, something I'm really interested in. Then I'm going to go get now I want the next step. What do I need to do? I'm going to go back and get that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, in the public sphere right now, you have Gary Vee, right? And he's saying, hey, if you're not inclined for traditional education, there's still no reason not to be successful, right? Sure. How am I going to get there, though, right? But you know what both of them have in common? An extreme amount of hard work, of focused hard work, right? On your success, right? Because if I want to be successful, what am I doing and what am I willing to do that other people aren't willing to do? And what you were willing to do is give up copious hours and your weekends once a month, and the expense to go to Michigan and become in your mind, become better tomorrow than you were yesterday.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was more than just one weekend, because it was basically been every weekend, because I've been, having to study. No,
but I'm saying the travel. That's what I'm saying. You invested a lot of time in studying, but then you also had to pick everything up and go to Michigan once a month.
Yeah. It's everything comes back down to, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to achieve your goals?
Right.
Because you have to sacrifice something always.
And if you're not willing to sacrifice, they're not really your goals.
That's right.
I mean, that's it. And a lot of it for most people is time, right? Because, you're an adult, I got to work 9 to 5 or 9 to whatever. I've got to be responsible to that, and I have to put in the appropriate amount of effort. Then I have to get in the seams of, now here's the rest of my day, and how do I balance that? Whether that's with, family relationships, all of those other things, and I still have to study, and I still have to be successful. That's where people fall down. Everybody's willing to go to work, right? And say, why am I not going to the next level? Well, you can argue now, why am I not going to the next level? Right? You have an argument for that.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
9:18, we've been awful productive today. This is, unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah, not too much sideways.
No,
we talked about what we intended to.
And some other topics.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Anybody out there watching, feel free to give us a topic for next week. I think that's the other thing we should start doing more, is pimping people for ideas. Because we'll stay on the same thing all the time. And I don't read everything. You don't read everything that's out there. So maybe somebody finds something interesting that we could chat about.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll try to, if anybody has any, let's start here. If anybody has any ideas on how to more efficiently capture what the viewers may want, I'm open to it. Leave YouTube comments, tweets, something. I don't know. We'll find a way. But yeah, it's a good idea.
Carrier pigeon.
Yeah, I'd take that too.
That was big 100 years ago, Dan.
I was thinking you're doing smoke signals.
Well, I had some earlier.
Yeah. All right, my friends.
All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your first day of the month.
Have a great week, everyone.
Peace.
Bye-bye.